Well, this was a pleasant little surprise, wasn't it? A Samurai Jack action game gets announced out of nowhere, and turns out it's actually pretty good. You play through it and you're like, hey, this is a decent little hack and slash right here. Alright. But come on, let's get real. I'm not here for a decent little hack and slash, I'm here for a proper action game. So that means when I load up the game for the first time, obviously I went right to Master Samurai difficulty, as I always do with games like this. Just give it to me as hard as I can get right off the bat. I can handle it. Bring it on. And so here I am at the start of the game trying to figure out how to play. Let's see, we got a light string. Looks like it's just 3. We got any delayed moves? Doesn't seem like it. Heavy string. And if we start mixing and matching, what about light heavy? Alright, got a launcher, and heavy in the air is a helm splitter, it looks like. No other heavy enders. Okay, now let's try lights in the air. Alright, got a basic air string. And I can do that into the helm splitter. Nice, nice. What else we got? Heavies into lights. Nope, guess not. We got a block, and you can, like, move while blocking a little bit. Okay. Got a dash move. Any dashing attacks? Nope, doesn't seem like it. Just pressing all the buttons and seeing what happens. What if I dash into a jump? That do anything? No, nothing there, I guess. Looks like that's pretty much it for your basic toolkit. And at first I was a little bit worried because there's not a whole lot going on here, but once I saw this skill tree and all the moves and stuff you could unlock, I was like, okay, let's see where it goes. Maybe there'll be a lot more to it here as we go on. So starting off on Master Samurai, we just got the basics, but I'm sure that'll be fine. I don't think this game is very good. And I'm not just saying that because I was dying a lot. And I was dying a lot, let me tell you. Holy shit, the first 2 levels of this game kicked my ass. But anyway, it's not that the game is hard. I mean, yes, it is hard, but that's not the problem. I love hard games, I got no issue with them. And dying over and over on a challenge is never a deterrent for me so long as that challenge is fair. There are actual, real problems with the combat design of this game. There are a lot of flaws that are, like, dude, what the fuck? You just do not have the tools to deal with what the enemies are throwing at you, and you just get fucked constantly. This fight you're looking at right here, this is just some random big fight from the 2nd level of the game, and it took me 45 minutes to finally beat it, because I just kept dying over and over and over again because it's just fucked. Like, first of all, look at this. Look at these little fucking green shits right here. Look at when they shoot lasers. Like, there's no choreography to this. There's no startup. They don't, like, telegraph that they're about to shoot at all. They just do. You have no way of knowing that they're about to fire or anything. You just get shot, and there's nothing you can do about it. And you have no mobility whatsoever. Like, this dash does not go very far, and it's got so much ending lag that you're stuck there and you constantly get hit by shit just trying to move around the battlefield. You have no good way to close the distance on enemies other than to just repeatedly dash and jump at them, and it's just terrible. Also, when you get knocked down on the ground, you can't do anything until Jack gets his ass back up, and the enemies can just hit you the moment you're vulnerable, and there's nothing you can do about it. And this shit, look at this shit. Sometimes the enemies will just, like, stop doing their attacks if it's not going to hit you. I throw up my block here, and he just, like, pulls back his sword, and yeah, sure, I was able to parry the follow-up hit, but sometimes enemies cancel one attack right into another attack. I dodge this guy's grab, and bam, he just hits me. And look at this fucking shit right here. Spoilers, I guess, whatever. Aku's the final boss. Come on, if you couldn't predict that, you're an idiot. But he's got this move where he shoots these laser eyes at you, and there's this big flash to let you know it's about to happen. That's fine. Look at this. Dodge it, and then start shooting arrows at him. Great. Now let's just do it again. What? What the fuck was that? That's fucking bullshit, dude. It got to the point where I was just cheesing out the boss of the 2nd level with projectiles. And let me tell you, it takes a lot to get me to play in some lame-ass way like this. And by the time I finally got to this point, I was like, I'm not having fun anymore. This sucks. This is terrible. I hate this. And right then and there, I was about to drop the game. But I was like, okay, let me give it another chance. Let's go down back to the normal difficulty, and let's play through that and get a bunch of upgrades and extra moves and stuff, and then come back to Master Samurai and see if it's a little bit better with more of a full moveset. Several hours have passed. And okay, game's not so bad. There's still definitely issues like the unreactable attacks and the enemy canceling weird stuff. But overall, a lot of the things that I was having issues with at first, they get smoothed over by the moves that you unlock later on. What I was saying before about how you don't have the tools to deal with what the enemies are throwing at you, I was right. You don't have the tools. You have to unlock them. Honestly, I have no idea why Master Samurai difficulty is available from the start of the game. It really should not be. You should, do not play Master Samurai until you've beaten the game on the normal difficulty. For the love of God, save yourself the headache that I went through. But for example, one of the things I complained about was not having a proper gap closer. Well, pretty quickly on, you get this rushing guard, where when you block while moving, you do this slide move, and then that has follow-up attacks that are really good gap closers that you can do. You also get a roll that you can tack onto the end of the dash to extend the invincibility time and the distance you travel, and it also has unique light and heavy follow-up moves. You can get an upgrade where when you perfectly time your dodge, everything goes into slow motion except you, so you can get some free damage in on enemies. I mean, just look at all these dudes around here, and I'm just sliding and rolling around and taking them out with relatively little issues. Before, this would have been impossible. You can also parry if you block right as an enemy attack hits you, but the timing on that is really, really tight, and the dodge is just universally better. But you eventually get a counterattack move that has a much larger window than the parry, but it gives you extra rewards. If you counter, then not only do you get the slow-mo benefit, but enemies will drop items that can include temporary buffs to damage your defense, health, or fire to fill up your little fire things in the bottom left corner. So parrying enemy attacks becomes a huge focus of the game, and it is super beneficial once you have this unlocked. And yeah, that fire in the bottom left, you can use it for big supers, which is great, but you can eventually get some skills that will buff your damage and defense when you've got max fire, so oftentimes I just keep that meter full to get that buff, and it makes a huge difference. So now with everything unlocked, let's dig a little bit deeper into your moveset in this game and what you can do. So you got your basic light string, which is about 4 or 5 hits depending on the weapon, and you can do a heavy as an ender to any individual hit of that combo. So as I showed off originally with the sword, light into heavy is a launcher. Then light into heavy is these 2 slashes, 3 lights into heavy is this stab, and the full 4 lights into a heavy get you this spinning attack. And the sword's full heavy string is 4 hits. 1, 2, 3, 4. And a very unique input method that this game has that I've never really seen before is to have any kind of movement on the stick when you press a button. So the second heavy attack when I go neutral is these 2 slashes here, but if I'm pressing on the stick, then you get that spinning move like at the end of the light string. And because this is based on input, I can point in the direction that I want this move to go. Usually this applies to the second heavy in a heavy string. I mentioned before that after sliding you can do a light or a heavy attack with each weapon, and sometimes this is a unique attack, like the sliding light on the sword. But the sliding heavy you can see is that overhead slash that's the final hit of the light string. And it works just like the final hit of the light string as well, so you can press heavy after that, and you'll get the spinning slash. Basically just skip into the last hit of the combo string. And by the way, that neutral or independent attack input also affects your airborne moves. So in the air, if I do a light attack with the sword while staying still, then I get the air string. But as you can see, if I'm moving, then instead I get this slash. On the sword, heavies in the air aren't affected, but it's different for every single weapon, you kinda just have to experiment. What the sword does have is a unique double jump heavy, which is this crazy diving stab attack. You can also high jump, and some weapons have unique high jump attacks. For the sword, it's just a diving stab again, but it goes a little bit more forward. I also mentioned rolling attacks before, and just like with the slide attacks, some of these are hits in your combo string. The light rolling attack is the 3rd hit of the string, so you can go immediately into the next ender, or you can press light again and go to the 4th hit and then get the spin. A lot of interesting combo paths in this game, actually. The sword's rolling heavy gives you the launcher from the light heavy string. And just like with the other slide and roll moves, it works exactly like the normal thing, so it's a good way to go immediately into some air comboing. And that just about covers it for like the universal way the weapons work. There are 5 different weapon types, and you can switch between them freely whenever you want, and they all pretty much control with those same principles in mind. Light strings that with each hit you can go into a heavy ender, heavy strings, rolling attacks, sliding attacks, airborne attacks, neutral and movement-dependent heavies and airborne moves, and all that kind of stuff. The difference is in how the actual weapons function. With the club here, there's not that much in the way of airborne moves, but it's very fast. You can get out a lot of hits really quickly with it that do pretty good damage. Oh yeah, and certain heavies with the clubs you can charge to get a ton of extra damage when you release, but I find that the charge is just way too long, and most of the time enemies are just going to block it, so it's not really that useful in my opinion. With polearm type weapons, you have a lot of moves that you can mash to keep them going for an extended period of time, like this twirling, or this twirling, or you got this stab move here that you can just keep going. They'll eventually forcibly stop, but you can extend them for quite a bit and get some decent damage out of it. Also, as an example of a unique high jump move, the high jump heavy on the pole is one of those diving stabs that you see on the sword and such, but the only way to do it with the pole arm is by doing a high jump into a heavy. And even the high jump light is unique here, so lots of different moves you can do in lots of different contexts, which is very cool. It also has the benefit of just a lot of range, which is very nice. And lastly, you have the fists, and just like everything else, works exactly the same. Light string, tack on a heavy at the end, heavy string, heavy into moving heavy. But what's unique about the fists is that they have one unique input that none of the other weapon types have, which is to do a 360 motion. So before pressing light or heavy, if you spin your stick around, then on heavy you get this spinning kick here, and on light you get this uppercut. And my god, this uppercut, for some reason, it does a nonsensical amount of damage, and it's super good, and you should use it all the time. And you can buffer the 360 input here, so you don't actually have to physically spin around. You can see here I do a couple punches, and while Jack is punching, I put in the 360, so when I press the button again, he goes right into the uppercut. Very useful. Okay, when I was initially recording this, I literally forgot about the hammer-type weapons in the game, because I don't think they're very good. They're really slow and powerful, but I think they are too slow. They are not worth it. You end up just stuck in these really, really long attack animations where you can't do anything, and the damage you get is just not worth the amount of risk you have to take. They have charge moves like the clubs, and I think they're equally as ineffective. Honestly, I just do not use this weapon type. I got nothing for it. Moving on. You also eventually get throws you can use, as well as the ability to break out of enemy throws, which is a lifesaver, Jesus Christ. I also briefly mentioned projectiles. There's a bunch of different types. There's throwing weapons and bows and guns. It doesn't really matter, honestly. It's all just different types of ammunition. They all basically work the same. The bow has a couple different arrow types, like explosive and piercing and stuff, but for the most part, you just shoot enemies with projectiles. It's pretty simple. But pro tip here, shooting projectiles on the ground locks you in place. But if you do it while in the air, you can still move around freely. Except pistols for some reason. I don't know why, but when you shoot those in the air, you just stop in place. Very weird. One important thing I have to point out about weapon switching that is super fucking annoying is that, for whatever reason, you don't switch weapons when you hit the button to actually go to that weapon. When you do that, the menu pops up showing you what weapon you're switching to, and you don't actually switch until that menu goes away. I have absolutely no idea why they chose to make it work like this. It might not seem like a big deal just looking at it here, but when you're actually in the thick of it, playing and fighting enemies, not being able to do the thing that you want to do immediately is so annoying. When you switch weapons, you're not actually going to be able to use that weapon for like another second or two. Why? Just switch to the goddamn weapon I tell you to switch to, Jack. Even more annoyingly, if you're dodging or rolling, then you won't switch weapons at all until you stop, and that includes chaining together multiple dodge rolls. Look, you can see the pole on my back even though I switched to the sword forever ago, and it's still there. It's only after I jump that I finally switch to the sword. Why did they make it like this? I do not understand. So that's just an annoying thing you have to get used to. That pretty much covers everything, and I gotta say, even with the flaws, I'm glad I stuck with this game, because at first, let me tell ya, it was not looking good, dude. And truthfully, I was worried since the day this game was announced, because as awesome as a cool Samurai Jack action game sounds, These type of action games, I think, are a lot harder to get right than most people think. So after the initial hours with this game, I was like, oh man, they got it wrong, as many people do. But really, I just think that they lock way too much behind the progression system. All of the stuff that makes the game fun is locked away at the start. But once you get all that stuff, then it turns out to be a pretty fun action game. It's not like the most crazily in-depth technical thing in the world, but it's satisfying and fun and really good. So, good stuff, Samurai Jack. But of course, we're not done yet. Because once you beat the game on Master Samurai difficulty, you unlock Master of Masters. And before I started my playthrough on this difficulty, I learned something about this game that completely changed everything. And it's this move right here, the instant guard. Guard quickly after landing an attack. You read that and you're like, okay, I can see how that'll be useful because you can't dodge or guard cancel your attacks normally in this game, but this gives you the option to now you can cancel right into blocking when your attack lands. So I can use that to block attacks that I normally wouldn't be able to. Great. And sure, you can do that, but you can do something else too. Because look at how quickly I can do something after blocking. It's basically instantaneous. There's like no recovery from your block. You can block right into lights, heavies, jumping, dashing, whatever. So, think about it. If you can hit an attack and then cancel it right into blocking, and then you can block into basically anything instantly, well, I think I'll just let the footage speak for itself. Pretty darn cool, if I do say so myself. And here's me playing on Master of Masters difficulty, using this cancel stuff as much as I can, and this has completely transformed the game. This game is now gone from pretty good to awesome. This shit is super cool, man. And I almost feel like it's necessary at this point, because going through Master Samurai, I was getting my ass handed to me pretty hard. Maybe I just got better through that playthrough, but once I learned this cancel thing, Master of Masters wasn't giving me as much trouble as you would have expected after Master Samurai. I still died plenty, of course, but not a whole lot more than Master Samurai. Some levels I even did better in. Maybe that just comes from all the experience I had doing, 3 playthroughs at this point? And that's another thing I wanted to talk about, actually, is doing multiple playthroughs of a game like this, because I think most people, when they get any game, they're like, alright, I'll play through it, I'll beat it, and then there you go, I'm done with it. But for action games like this, you're really not getting the full experience if you do that. And I don't just mean because it's harder and that makes it cooler or whatever. I mean that, you could just look at it as padding if you wanted, that you're just playing through the same game again, so whatever. But really, the levels, who cares? You're not really playing through the levels. That's not where the gameplay is. The gameplay is in the enemy encounters. And in this game, like any good action game, they actually change the enemy encounter layouts on different difficulties. Like on Master Samurai difficulty, this fight is with a bunch of undead soldier guys, but then now here on Master of Masters, it's a bunch of the ninjas that are the toughest enemy type in the game. So by not continuing on in a game like this and not trying those harder difficulties, you're basically missing out on 2/3 of the game. And in my opinion, those 2/3 are the most fun ones, because it takes all the cool combat mechanics and skills you've built up, and now it starts really putting them to the test. Especially Master of Masters. I mean, just look at this shit, dude. It's a mess. It's so cool. And that might seem daunting at first when you just start a game like this, and you're like, I'm not good. But like I said with my playthrough of Masters, the skill I built up helped make that seem not as hard as it is. As you go through the difficulties, you'll get better and better, and you'll be more capable of tackling these challenges. You just have to not be afraid to get stuck at something and die over and over. It's gonna happen, bro. I'm pretty sure if I counted all the deaths I had across all my playthroughs of this game, it'd be well into the hundreds. But that's fine, you just push through because it's fun. So my recommendation for playing this game is play through it once, beat it, on Samurai, not Master Samurai. Then after you've beaten the game, go on to Master Samurai, Then after that, get all the upgrades, get all the power-ups, all the stuff, make sure you are fully kitted out and ready for action, and then go take on Master of Masters and be a cool guy. And hey, if it gets too hard, there's always healing items that the game gives you. And let me tell you a special little secret about the best way to use healing items. See, what you do is, you go into the shop, and then you sell them. I ain't using no frickin' healing items, you kidding me? What's the point of playing a challenging game like this if you're just gonna cheese through it with healing items that basically make your mistakes completely null and void? I mean, the game gives you a point bonus at the end of the level for not using healing items, so they full-on know that this is just a crutch that you only use if you're lame. You don't want to be lame, do you? I don't. Then don't use healing items. Just do what any intelligent person would do. Bash your head against that brick wall until you finally get through. And, I don't really have anything more to say, to be honest, but I kind of just want to keep talking because I feel like I didn't show off that much cool gameplay in this video, so if I just ramble on, then that gives me an excuse to put cool stuff in the background. I like that this game has, like, the normal fights, but then it also has big fights where you fight a ton of enemies and they all die in one hit. That feels very Samurai Jack. If you've watched the show, then that's usually how the action scenes are choreographed, just a whole lot of Jack cutting people in half. And the fact that your sword and fists have infinite durability, but every other weapon will break eventually, it's like, you know, Jack's fighting, and then he just grabs a weapon and he uses it for a little bit, and then he goes back to the sword. Also very true to the show, I think, and that's cool. And, how you doing? How was your day? Alright, come on, that's enough stretching this out. You get the point. The game is cool. Thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed. See you next video.